Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Gresham Harkless. Let's talk about blogging and SEO and all of that important stuff that is going to move the needle in your business. Welcome to the show, Gresh.
Alicia, super excited to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me and excited to get started.
You've got a lot of different things going on. So I want to just take a few moments, let our listeners know however you want to start, right? Which business do you want to start with? Let's give them a little bit of a background about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it again, just being on the show. But, a lot of what I do is I always say like the name of the game is being found and all about visibility. So I have kind of two places that I spend most of my time, but a lot of those, kind of overlap. So I have a digital marketing company called Blue 16 Media, Blue 16 Marketing, will be 10 years this year. And the whole goal of that is really to help out, small to medium sized businesses and organizations to get their name out there, to increase their visibility using digital tools. We primarily focus on web design support and the SEO piece, kind of building that foundational aspect. But a lot of like what I talk about is around kind of what I like to call building your own media company. And that really focuses on how can you kind of leverage tools that are out there to basically show value to your ideal clients, to hopefully help them to problem solve whatever the problems might be, or bring some type of value to them in so many different ways. So my quote unquote media company is CBNation, and that consists of blogs, daily podcasts, blog posts, and video content, really to help CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners to succeed. So it's kind of my way to provide support and hopefully opportunity for the people that we hope to serve. And those two things kind of go hand in hand. It's kind of like my philosophy that I give to clients on steroids, if you can kind of say that.
A lot of people know that they need to do content marketing for visibility, but a lot of people get tripped up on sort of the beginning, middle, and end. Like, what is really the end game? Because we have it in our mind, unless you've been at this for a long time and learned through the school of hard knocks, right? We have it in our mind because we're sold advertising that if I put out this blog post, or if I create this video, or if I put out this piece of content, that is going to equal some type of return. And that's not always the case. It's more of a long game. So I want to talk about that because you use the word visibility. And I always say to my clients, and I don't really do as much conventional business coaching as I'm working with people on their mindset, but because all of my clients are business owners, a lot of business related challenges come up. And because I have a pretty extensive background with business development, I can share right from that perspective. I always say, you can't help people if they don't know you exist. So let's talk about this from a really practical, pragmatic, sort of down to earth, no BS sort of way, so that those who maybe have dabbled a little bit in blogging, or dabbled a little bit in podcasting, or done a little bit of this or done a little bit of that and didn't get the results that they wanted, can maybe see it from a slightly different perspective that can help them to leverage these things for the growth of their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you phrased everything. You definitely obviously get it and understand like how impactful people can be, but they have to know like where they're going and how they're hoping to make that impact. And a lot of times when I speak with clients, I actually have the analogy of basically trying to create your favorite dish. And when you try to create your favorite dish, you have an idea of what ingredients are essential to you being able to kind of have that dish come to out into perfection. I don't believe that a lot of people approach marketing from that perspective. They sometimes dibble dabble, they try different things, they say that it doesn't work. And that's why I compare that to going to the grocery store to try to figure out what are the essential ingredients to help you to create whatever dish that you're desiring. So if you don't have an idea that, hey, at the end of this, I want to have, apple pie or sweet potato pie or, ham or whatever it might be that you're preparing, a lot of times you will end up putting everything into your quote unquote cart. You'll try to do every single, marketing strategy, idea. And a lot of times, just like a not as well prepared meal, you'll come back and it won't taste as appetizing as it could. But if you're very strategic about what it is that you're doing, then you have that opportunity to really connect with your clients, to be able to provide value in the way that they want value, and then also be able to hopefully drive home some of those opportunities. But one of the other things that's a big misconception that you talked about too is that visibility does not necessarily equal clients and customers. It just brings you that awareness, so you have potentially the opportunity to do that. And a lot of times when you think of your marketing, it's kind of that inverted pyramid, where at the top is going to be your activity. So it's going to be, blogs, being on podcasts, maybe you're doing an advertising campaign, and just because people see your product or service, or they hear what it is that you do, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to become a client. But that's where you want to try to, develop that funnel, for lack of a better term, so that you're driving people to actually potentially becoming customers. But a lot of times, we forget that the more active you are, the more opportunity you have. And I think, blogging, of course, is a great way to do that. But there's so many other, ingredients as well, too, including, SEO, that really can help people to kind of, drive home those opportunities.
So, with your expertise, I don't want to miss this opportunity to really extract some good stuff out of you. So, knowing that we have an audience that's all over the map in terms of industry and size. So, it does make it a little more challenging because marketing really does need to be custom tailored to the business. But from your perspective, I'm sure you've seen certain things are more categorically beneficial across a wide variety of industries and stages in an individual's business. Can you share maybe a couple of tips or suggestions, things to get people pointed in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you have that understanding in your audience as too, of that, the best marketing is gonna be that customized marketing, and understand exactly like how you're able to quote unquote take those ingredients and tailor them to your ideal clients. But there are definitely some best practices. There's a framework that's even in place that you can kind of help direct the person there. But I think even before, I usually talk with clients and even make recommendations. I usually say there's like three essential questions you want to make sure that you are able to answer. And the reason is because I think by answering those questions, it gives you kind of like the foundation, the filter, to be able to understand, do I choose that ingredient? How long do I use it? Just should I do, TikTok marketing, or should I do SEO or blogging, and all those aspects? You start to understand that. And those three questions are really around your target market. So really painting a picture of who you're targeting. And it might be multiple organizations. You might target referral partners, because those referral partners are going to be the ones that are actually going to refer direct clients to you. It might be directly to your clients. You know that they spend more time and they're younger, and so they spend more time on platforms like TikTok or something like that. But you start to think strategically about that based off of who you're targeting. So first, paint a picture of the clients or types of clients that you're trying to target, so that it gives you an idea of like what to do and what not to do. The next thing is really being clear on what your goal is. Like we even talked about, knowing where you're going to go and being clear on that. It's incredible the amount of people that know that they need to do marketing, but they know that they need to do it just because it's going to check off a box of something that they're supposed to do, rather than look at it strategically. So the reason that is so important to know where you want to go, because an e-commerce business is potentially going to market and advertise in a completely different way than somebody that's a speaker, or somebody that maybe is trying to drive more downloads for their podcast, or somebody that does want people to go to their site and sign up for their membership site. So you really want to be clear on what success like ultimately means, to you. And then, the probably one of the most important questions is just the resource question. And that's most of the time people think about money. And of course that is important to understand, like what budget and what things you have in place, but also don't forget about time. So especially if you're more of like in the startup mode, maybe you're doing a lot more bootstrapping, so you have more time than you have money. So you want to just understand all those questions, because that's going to help direct, the things that you're going to do from there. But I think most of the time when people do marketing, they jump past all those questions. They don't know who they're targeting. Sometimes they don't even know what is their, I call it secret sauce of their business, the thing that sets them apart and makes it unique. And they don't have those questions. So it becomes really difficult for them to market, but even more difficult, even if they were to bring on an agency or, an expert to be able to help that. So being able to kind of answer those questions is absolutely huge. And of course, there's professionals that are able to kind of get those questions, help you to answer those questions and get to that destination. But at the same time, you want to make sure you have those things in place.
I love that. Now, I want to actually talk about a specific tactic for a little bit. I mentioned to you before we started recording, I haven't had any other experts on that really talked specifically about blogging. Blogging is obviously, it's been around a long time. And it sort of stands the test of time because people like to learn, they like to consume content. They're on Google, they're researching, they're looking for answers to their questions. And a blog is a really, really great tool for speaking directly to your ideal client or customer, specifically about their problem that you can solve. And yet, blogging is one of those bittersweet sort of love-hate things, because either people don't like writing, or they don't consider themselves particularly creative. And even though they don't necessarily mind writing the blogs, they run out of ideas, or they feel like it's daunting, or again, like we talked about, kind of one of those like, I'm going to half-ass this and I'm going to do a little bit here, a little bit there, and it doesn't really get any traction. It's not getting any views. And if nobody's seeing it and it's not actually helping people, then it's not really a very effective marketing tool for your business. So now that I have set you up with all sorts of objections to blogging, maybe you can enlighten us on some ways to actually utilize blogging productively in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I definitely have heard all those objections, so many times, and I think even around the idea of blogging, sometimes people have a perception of what it is from 10, sometimes 15 years or so ago. That one of the biggest aspects that people should kind of keep in mind about blogging is that it's evolved, and blogging 10, 15 years ago is not what it is today. And that is true of just about everything, especially after the pandemic. But that's one of the biggest aspects that I think that people should really understand about blogging, that it's not just always written content. Now, of course, written content is a big aspect of writing and being able to kind of create that content that's actually written so that people can read. But understand that just as we're experiencing now, being able to kind of have different types of content within your content is going to be the way that you're going to kind of, for lack of a better term, break through the noise. A lot of times from an SEO perspective, it'll help you perform and rank better. And that blog post will do generally better overall by just having more different types of content. And when I say different types of content, I'm thinking of audio. So embedding your podcast into an actual blog post is going to help it perform better. Having a video on top of that is going to help it perform better as well too. If you just have a video, potentially, maybe you're going to transcribe that episode. There's so many different ways, but I think one of the first things you want to do is create a pillar piece of content. Know that this is the content that I want to do, and then you're going to repurpose it in different ways, but you're going to do it within that piece of content. So think about how you can embed it and make it really media rich, so that it will perform better overall, but still so that search engines can ultimately read that. But I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions around blogging, is that it's just like, oh, I don't want to write, or no one's going to listen to what I'm writing about. But in actuality, people are consuming so much video content, so much audio content, that you can leverage your blog to basically have all those different types of media within it. But one of the biggest, I think, exercises that is so overlooked around blogging is being able to kind of answer your potential clients questions. And the reason why that's important is because blogging, I think, goes hand in hand with SEO. It's not just you're doing it just to say you're checking off a box. I think you want to be very strategic about your blogging strategy. And one of the best ways that you can do that is think about the questions that your clients and customers are asking you. And I've used it as a way that if I get a question over and over again, I'll actually put it into a blog post. I'll create a video, create audio, write it out so that when the next client asks a question, I actually have that piece of content that I can use. So that will, on a very practical level, save you time. But on an even deeper level, if you understand that one client's asking it and you hear it over and over again, that there's another client and another client, there's potential that people are also searching for that question. So I would go as far as to take that specific question and put it in within the title of that blog post, because what we sometimes forget, search engines, which of course are like Google and Bing and those big, media companies. But we're also starting to see that within certain platforms, they're their own type of search engines. For example, TikTok is one of the biggest ones that's increasing the amount of searches. So when you start to create content around the specific questions that people are asking, that's going to help to increase your likelihood of showing up. So on a very practical level, again, you don't have to say that I'm going to, write, 3,000 words or anything like that. You don't have to say I'm going to, have this deep conversation. You say, hey, I have this question all the time. You answer that question within the blog post, and then you want to make sure that you're of course tracking those things so that you can hopefully drive clients not necessarily to your homepage but to that specific post on the site.
So you mentioned really quickly um, pillar content. And for most people, they were like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So can you expand upon that a little bit? Because I think a lot of people, especially with this whole like content strategy, fail to take into consideration that part of being strategic really does involve much more than just simply throwing some text or even embedding a video onto a post and hoping that it does something positive. So can you school everybody a little bit on that?
Yeah, so the whole idea of the video content, the pillar content, is really understanding like what's going to be the piece of content you're going to focus on the most. You want to be as strategic as possible. I usually say especially if you're doing it yourself, you want to do kind of a personal inventory of like your strengths, weaknesses, things that you enjoy to do. If you love to write, maybe your pillar piece of content is going to actually be a blog post. You're going to write out a 3,000 word, blog post. If you know that you potentially like having conversations a little bit more, maybe a little bit more camera shy, but you love kind of talking, maybe your pillar piece of content is going to be podcast. If you are not shy about being in front of the camera and you want to, sing to the world and do all of those things, potentially your pillar piece of content is going to be video. But the beauty of these pieces of content is not that they just stay there. You're going to repurpose the content in multiple ways. You can do that within the blog post, but the kicker is that you can also use that pillar piece of content into other types of content on other platforms as well too. So think about a podcast interview, for example, where you're interviewing somebody and they have maybe 10 to 15 really strong nuggets or pieces of content that you feel like people would love to hear this. Rather than people consuming the entire interview, often what they'll do now, we're seeing this as attention spans are decreasing, is that first nugget can be something that goes on TikTok. That second nugget could be maybe something that's an Instagram story. So you start to take those pieces of content and then you start to repurpose them. But then don't forget, like content really follows the trends of like what people are doing and how they're consuming content. So for people that are on the go, maybe they want to listen and they're not actually going to be able to watch that video. People that maybe, and this goes back to like understanding your target market, because if you understand your target market are people that really want to know to the depths, the ins and outs of all the things that you're describing, maybe you do want to write out and have a lot more depth and content around that. But again, it's understanding that you want to almost, for lack of a better term, market your marketing. You want to have that type of content that's bite size so that you can draw people to the marketing that you're doing to hopefully become clients. And that's when you start to see how those pieces of content can ultimately become that funnel that can drive people to be more clients and customers.
So good. So now I want to shift gears a little bit because I want to speak to you as the entrepreneur. This show is all about business. It is, what does it take as a business owner to create a successful business in life? And that involves a lot of inner work. So we talk a lot about mindset, and a lot of people have the varying degrees of understanding what that terminology actually means. Most people recognize that you've got to have the right mindset in order to achieve your goals. And that's not always the easiest thing because we have old beliefs, fears, doubts, insecurities that we're constantly bumping up against on our journey as business owners, putting ourselves out there in a bigger way, stretching outside of our comfort zones, doing things that we've never done before, taking leaps of faith, not knowing if we're going to land on our feet. So one of the questions that I do love to ask my guests is if there is a specific mindset obstacle that you personally encountered and had to work through, overcome in order to get to where you are today that you'd be willing to share with us.
Absolutely. And that's why I absolutely love your show, because I think that when I first started my business, you hear about the importance of mindset, but I don't think you understand the importance of mindset until you reach that obstacle. Then you're like, oh, that's exactly what they were talking about, where you have these limiting beliefs, you have, whatever it is that's stopping you from getting to where you are. And I think for me, honestly, it was just probably in the very beginning of the business, is just putting myself into environments that understood that it was even possible to start a business. And that's, it sounds crazy, but when you're not in that environment, when you're actually getting a lot of flack, for lack of a better term, around starting your business and how to start, or even that it's realistic or that you're going to fail, and you get all these things before you're actually starting, and I even experienced it from the people that I love most, and I think that I understood later on that there's people that sometimes care for you and they don't want to see you fail, but at the same time, you can't not fail to succeed. You really have to go through that experience. And I think that the people that love and care for you, they don't want to see you, scratch your knee and fall down and do all those things. But that's really part of the journey. So for me, like, I really struggled around like even feeling and having the confidence and the ability to even believe that I'm going to be, where I am today. So it was really me, I think, putting myself in that environment without even knowing it, that allowed me to not even think of, oh, I just want to have a business, to like, oh, I want to get to this, amount of revenue, to that amount of revenue. It became an assumption, I guess, that you can say, that you could have a business because I'm in the room with a bunch of business owners. So it didn't become like, how do I even stay in business? It became, how do you take the next step and the next step and the next step? And I think that being able to kind of put myself in those different environments, and especially the podcast and the blog, and obviously being able to kind of talk with awesome people like you, have definitely helped out tremendously. But I would say, like, without a doubt, like, I had no idea that I didn't have the environment and the mindset, and even maybe in the confidence to be able to say that I could start a business, and how that kind of reared its head, especially in the very beginning, and still can kind of, do that to some degree now.
I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who can relate because not a lot of people are in those types of families or in those types of environments that really nurture the entrepreneurial spirit. And it actually seems far more common for people to be afraid, like you had mentioned, of the risk, because we know that it's not an easy journey. And even those who have never been in business, they hear the stories, they know that there is a statistically higher fail rate, than we would prefer, right? And you're right. When we care about someone, especially anybody who has children. They get it, right? We want to protect the people that we love. We don't want to see them hurting. And so if the mind has an association of that's dangerous, that's risky, of course, we're not going to be supported in those risky endeavors. And that's why, to your point, it is so incredibly important to put yourself in environments where you can start to show your own mind a different reality, because the mind can only operate on what is known to it. And if it has no frame of reference for success, for what's possible, for what even confidence looks like, there's nothing for the subconscious mind to draw off of. And we have to learn those things by seeing it, by reading books, by putting ourselves in new environments that create new knowns and new associations in the subconscious mind. Otherwise, we're always going to be running into the old self-inflicted, self-imposed, pre-planted limiting beliefs that will stop us from ever creating a life and business that we love.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's so funny that you say that, and I think one of the things that I heard, I think when I started my business, but I still always come back to, is like being the kid on the jungle gym, and understanding that in order to go to the next rung, you have to let go of the previous rung. And I think that so many times we get stuck on that rung where we want to go to the next rung, but we don't want to let go to go to the next rung. And, even, when things happen and sometimes we don't make it to the next rung, we fall down, we go back and we start over again with more knowledge. And I think that if we can, kind of understand that as part of the journey, and that we can sometimes even minimize the bruises and the hits and all those things, then that's just gonna, I think, reframe, everything around like entrepreneurship. And I think it's just gonna increase more successful businesses and entrepreneurs and business owners.
Absolutely. All right. I know we can keep going on all sorts of different topics here, but because we are running out of time, I want to make sure that our listeners know how they can connect with you. So, can you share with our listeners your website, where you want to direct them to, how they can connect with you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can definitely find out as much as possible about me on the link imceo.com. And that'll have link to the podcast. You can also check out imgresh.com, and that has links to my podcast, my blog, to Blue 16 Media, the marketing, all of those things. There's also blue16media.com too, that also has a lot of the different brands and things that I'm working on as well too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gresh, for being with us. It has been a super fun conversation. I totally appreciate everything you've shared, and it was fun to get into a new topic today.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, Alicia.
And of course, thank you to all of our listeners. You know, we're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.